a song for you.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to Season 8, Episode 3 of Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, and right now we are working through the songs of the album Who Do We Think We Are, the fourth studio album from the Mark II era. Big changes coming, but you know what? This song has an important reference to me because it defined a moment in music that I refer to when a song will reach a similar point, and we'll get to that coming up. I'll let you know when we get there and what it is and what it's all about and why it's important to me. But it was a great way to define a moment of music for me. And so I appreciate that, but I love this song, always have. I can't believe that this song is so short. It's under 3 minutes, just under 3 minutes, but under 3 minutes. It almost feels like this should be on a Misfits album. But it's not. It's a good rock and roll song. Definitely belongs on the Who Do We Think We Are album. There's some interesting effects that we'll talk about. Lots of cool stuff to dig into. So let's do it. This is Super Trouper by Deep Purple. Now, I want to remind you guys that we are listening to the Roger Glover remixed anniversary version of the album. And, as typical as I seem to mention on so many songs, and I never really sat down and put this together until I started doing the show, how many of these songs just have a quick, hey, here's the sound, we're going to get right into the story, and just boom, we're going to set the pace and the vocals come right in. But there is something interesting in this sound here. It almost feels like it's clipping the mic a little bit and the compressor's pushing it back just a little bit on some of those notes because they feel like they're pushed down. But I love the sound of this. I love the sound of this album. The production is a little bit different. It does have a little bit more gain or high end EQ in here. And there are a lot of effects on this album, which we hadn't really gotten on the whole from Deep Purple. I like it. It starts off a little bit progressive with this just intense lick. And boom, here we are in the song.
Man, when I died, I was flash, I was full of pride. I gave it all, I gave my soul. I was so strong. I felt the truth, I felt the pain in every soul.
Oh man, I feel like there's so much to unpack here. First off, so we basically start off the story with Ian's dead, and he's reflecting on his life. I don't know. I mean, I've kind of thought about a couple of different possibilities of what it's about. Like maybe it's about his reflection on his life and his wanting to come back to the next life or somehow be reborn into this life. A couple different things, but you guys know I'm not huge on lyrics. But it is a cool perspective. I mean, you start off right with, I was a young man when I died. Well, now we've got a position, a point of reference of where we're going to be looking at the story from. So that's a very interesting start to a song. Also, I really like that the first two lines have the ahs at the, in the forefront, but then the next line has them in the background as we head into the chorus. I think it's a really cool dynamic. It breaks up the monotony of just always being the same thing at the end of every line. It's done a little bit differently, which adds an element of interest. There's a little bit of flange in there, just a slight bit, or I guess it would be phaser back then. So there's so many elements. And then as we go into the chorus here, we hear that hit on the snare drum, and we're hearing a little bit of flange. So a very flange heavy song.
Just
I'm not sure exactly how they're triggering the phaser, though. I mean, obviously it's on the drums, but I don't know if it's being also triggered by the organ as well, or maybe the guitar, because it seems like there's this wash of it that might be more than just the drums, because it's not just coming in on the drum hits or the reverberation of the ride cymbal. So I tend to think that there must be something else that they're using to trigger it as well, most likely the organ or guitar. And obviously it's on the vocals too. But I love that there's just something about the feel of the vocals on this chorus, the way that Ian sings it, that is just pleasing to me. I don't really know how to define it so much because there's nothing special in particular about the way he's singing, but there's just something about the dynamic of it, the way the words are placed that I don't know. It's always just made me smile. Um, but very interesting. And then of course we get these beautiful little riffs with some air in between to bring us back into the next verse. Nicely done with the typical connection point where everybody comes together. But this one's a little more spaced out than normal, which adds a bit of an interesting dynamic. And again, like these guys are just always doing different things.
I was living in a rock and roll sky. Oh, I was a king heavy on the style. Oh, super trooper, yes I know you well, making me shine. I couldn't see what you did to me. I was so blind.
I tend to think, based on this verse anyway, and I'll have to see if I feel this way after the third verse, but I tend to think that this might be about management. Management was really pushing Purple hard. They were climbing up the charts, but they were doing just extensive tours. They were exhausted, only taking breaks when somebody got sick. And it was really destroying the band. And then you've got all the turmoil inside of the band. But I really tend to think that even a lot of that might have been brought on just, started by the pressures of management, or at least they were an accessory to the other things that were happening between the band members and mainly Ian and Richie. But Ian, this wouldn't be long before Ian would write his letter that he said was really a cry for help. And everybody just accepted it as a resignation and said, well, that's that. So thinking in terms of where he was headed, and I don't know the time difference between these writing sessions and that letter being written, but we know where this was all going. So, I have to wonder if this wasn't maybe a precursor to that letter, a bit of a, here's a problem I'm identifying, and I know what it's going to be like when I look back on it later, if it doesn't change now. Just a perspective. I don't know. I don't have any documentation on that being the absolute fact, but that's, a possible meaning that I'm getting from it. Musically, obviously, it's great. Roger is a little harder to hear than I would have expected in this remix, but he is, as always, just playing amazingly well, adding a lot of colorful bass. And I have to say colorful bass because when I think of bass players, I mostly think of bass players bringing up the low end of a song, unless you've got more of like a jazz fusion bass player, maybe somebody who would play for a band like King Crimson or Emerson, Lake and Palmer, for example. But Roger, he's such a melodic bass player that I really don't like to say bringing up the low end of the music or thickening it or rounding it out or anything, because he's really just as melodic as he is rhythmic and sound filler, I should say. Sound balancer would be better. Sorry, Raj. Okay, I definitely think that the flange is being triggered by the organ as well as the drums and vocals. Could still be guitar or bass, but definitely those three. And I'm basing that on just that da-da, da-da. You can hear the flange being triggered by that. So organ is definitely a part of that. And that makes a lot more sense to me. Also, love those little, jazzy feels that we get from Ian Pace on the ride cymbal. He's not just playing quarter notes going, as he could do, but there's a little bit of a bounce in there here and there, which adds a little bit of livelihood to the ride playing. It would be so simple to just play the quarter notes, right? But he's got a little bit extra in there, gives it a little more of a swing feel. And man, it just sounds so good. I absolutely love the sound of this song. Now, I'm going to tell you why I like this solo so much. And then I'm going to play just a little bit and then talk about that next. And there's a reason for that I kind of teased at the beginning. But the reason I like this solo so much is because it really does a great job replacing the verse here. And I've always felt that the solo should be representative of whatever the vocals are because they're covering for the vocal. You're giving the vocalist a rest, you're giving a chance for somebody else to shine, but they need to continue the story, the feeling of the story. And I think Ritchie does a great job kind of feeling like he's a little bit restrained here and maybe has some of that, intense or, anger or frustration or, however you're feeling the lyrics. I think he brings it out very beautifully in that solo. I'm going to go back a couple of seconds and play from there. And then I'm going to stop it real quick and then we're going to talk. So this point has defined a moment of music for me, and it starts with a crash cymbal that is right about the end of Ritchie's solo. The music changes. We get a feeling of empowerment, and then those first two lines of the vocal are very strong, very determined. And I don't know who he's talking to, whether it's another ghost, whether he's talking to himself, whatever, but it's something that I feel is I'm going to make a comeback. And so this to me is what I call a comeback part, right? A determination, a change, a claim, anything like that really defines this part for me. And that is not something I hear in a lot of music. Now, granted, there's millions of songs I don't know. Okay, I want to be fair about that. But when I think about songs I do know, they're either here's how bad things are from start to finish, or here's where I'm at, or here's how I got there, or here's where I want to be, but not a lot of songs that come to mind that have this kind of revelation or defining moment within the song where everything shifts. The feeling of the music shifts, the vocals shift, and there's just this determination from the woe's me to the I'm going to take control of this. And I really dig that. And so that I've defined as a comeback part. And, whenever I do talk about songs, whether it would have been on Uriah Heep the Magician's podcast or song reviews or album reviews I've done on the Haskincast podcast, those are songs where I've used this terminology. So I may be the only one on the planet that feels that way. I have no idea. But I'm going to rewind it and play it back from just before that part so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And, what do you think? I do love those flams on the snare too before they hit the crashes during, the first couple ahs, that's when, if you're not familiar with that term, that's when a drummer will hit a snare with both sticks, but slightly off from one another. So it's kind of a very quick double hit. And he does that like da 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 right there where he's hitting the snare. He does a flam and then the crash and a flam and then the crash. And I really like that. It adds a little bit of extra power to it. And I have to say, as dry as the snare drum sounds in this, it really works for the song. And that's it. That's Super Trooper, you guys. I really, really, really do love this song. I always have. It's one that just from the first time I heard it, I was just enthralled with it. And part of it, I think, is the lyrics, which, like I said, well, back then, I think I listened to lyrics more than I do now. But the music, the sound of it, it's so different. It's powerful. And there's so many good things about this song. And I really didn't even talk that much about the performances. Big fan of this one, especially as a drummer. This is just a lot of fun to play. And as a listener, it's great to listen to. So shorter episode today, guys. Wow. I mean, it's such a short song, but I hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you're out walking your dog, taking your morning jog, whatever you're doing, listen again, go listen to the song. Just listen to the song by itself. I always say that's a good idea. Go listen to another song. Listen to the whole album. I don't know. Listen to another podcast. There's plenty of them out there. But I hope that you guys have a great day. If I am thinking right, this should be airing on Friday. So I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. And we'll be back on Monday with another 4 episodes for the week of Deep Purple Smoke on the podcast. You can also check out the Deep Purple podcast, which is the original Deep Purple show. They have a completely different format. And definitely worth listening to. The link is in the show notes for that. Should also be on every podcast outlet where you're listening to this show, unless you are streaming off of my website, in which case, no, you have to go to the show notes. But great show. Check out Nate and John. They do an amazing job on that. And there's plenty of other podcasts to listen to. I have no idea what will be airing on the Haskincast podcast because I record this about a month in advance. So I'm not sure, but I'm sure it'll be something. Either way, you guys have a great weekend and we'll see you on Monday. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode and thanks for listening.